It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. With South Korea set to announce its own set of sanctions against North Korea, President Park Geun-hye takes a step ahead and urges UN member states to follow Seoul's lead in further punishing the reclusive state. The annual Seoul-Washington combined military exercises are defensive in nature, but this time with O-Plan 5015, the allies are ready to strike key North Korean targets quickly and precisely should the regime launch another provocation. After dramatically turning down a proposal to form another opposition coalition last week, the People's Party seems to be facing internal strife, with leadership having second thoughts about merging with the Minju Party. Chairing a regular meeting with her senior secretaries on Monday, President Park Geun-hye stressed the importance of unity at a time when national security is being threatened by North Korea. Song Ji-sun brings us this recap of what the president had to say.
President Park Geun-hye once again emphasized the importance of implementing the new international sanctions on North Korea to make the regime change its ways. With Seoul set to announce its own sanctions against the North on Tuesday, Park called on the UN member nations to follow suit and impose additional multilateral and bilateral sanctions on Pyongyang. As threats from Pyongyang increase, in reaction to the largest annual joint Korea-US military drills that kicked off on Monday, President Park called for a stern response to any aggression from the North.
북한에는 추가 도발 시 응분의 대가를 치르게 될 것이라는 것을 확실히 보여주기를 바랍니다. 또한 이렇게 엄중한 상황에서는 우리 내부의 단합이 매우 중요합니다. 안보를 정쟁의 대상으로 삼아서는 안 될 것입니다. 국민의 단합된 힘으로 위기를 극복할 수 있도록 정치권에서도 협조해 주시기를 부탁드립니다.
Playing down the opposition bloc's claims about a recently approved counterterrorism bill, President Park promised that the personal information of citizens would not be collected indiscriminately. With Seoul's intel agency set to convene an emergency meeting on Tuesday regarding increasing threats posed by North Korea, President Park urged lawmakers to pass a long-pending bill on counterterrorism so that the country can protect itself against cyber attacks from Pyongyang and other terror groups. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States began their regularly scheduled annual joint military drill. The allies decided to make this year's exercises the largest to date following North Korea's recent nuclear test and long-range missile launch. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry says it will strongly retaliate if North Korea carries out a provocation during the drills.
If North Korea continues to ignore our warnings and carries on with its provocations, we will sternly counter and the regime will be responsible for its reckless actions.
The Allies' annual joint military drills, dubbed Key Resolve and Full Eagle, are now underway as tension simmers on the Korean peninsula. The exercises, which run through the end of April, will involve almost 300,000 South Korean and 15,000 American troops. What's new this year is that the Allies will practice Operational Plan 5015. It will see the forces check what they would do during a preemptive strike on North Korea's nuclear facilities and missile sites. The troops will also conduct training missions involving the 4Ds, namely detect, disrupt, destroy, and defend. In addition to doubling the number of U.S. troops taking part in this year's exercises, Washington will also deploy some key military hardware to the Korean peninsula for the first time, including an aircraft carrier, nuclear submarine, and two 40,000-ton amphibious assault ships. There's also been word that Washington could deploy its nuclear-capable B-2 stealth bomber. In a real-life combat scenario, the aircraft could be deployed on missions in North Korean territory and remain undetected while targeting key military facilities. Experts say the B-2 is the weapon the North fears most because of its stealth and bombing capabilities. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And to no one's surprise, Pyongyang has launched its annual protests against the drills. This year it stepped up the aggressive rhetoric a touch, even warning of a preemptive nuclear strike against the allies. Han Da-eun turns to North Korean experts to see if that's a possibility and what else could be up its sleeve.
Tension on the Korean peninsula has escalated a notch as North Korea has threatened South Korea and the United States with a nuclear strike. Pyongyang's National Defense Commission released a statement Monday saying North Korea will enter the stage of a full-scale attack to counter a nuclear war craze prompted by the U.S. and its allies. The statement added, North Korea's military counteraction against such nuclear provocation will be a more preemptive and offensive nuclear strike. It's the repeat of North Korea's typical verbal attacks against the South Korea-U.S. military drills, only the words are much stronger this time. However, most experts agree that Pyongyang wouldn't carry out such an attack.
North Korea will not be able to strike at the joint drills as they involve some of America's most advanced weaponry. And Pyongyang has to stay focused on its upcoming ruling Workers' Party Congress. That said, I expect some small-scale protests, such as short-range missile launches.
Experts say North Korea is aiming to justify its dictatorial rule internally while attempting to induce a change in Washington's hardline North Korea policies. 한다은, Arirang News.
South Korea is set to announce a separate set of unilateral sanctions on North Korea on Tuesday. Coming on the heels of finalized UN sanctions on Pyongyang, the new set of measures are expected to ramp up even more pressure on the North. Connie Kim brings us the latest.
South Korea's separate set of unilateral sanctions on North Korea are expected to increase pressure on Pyongyang. When the Prime Minister's office releases the sanctions on Tuesday afternoon, Seoul is expected to ban all ships that have traveled through North Korea. Once implemented, the measures imposed by Seoul will be tougher than those following the North's torpedoing of the warship Cheonan in 2010. There is also speculation that the sanctions will include suspension of the joint railway project, dubbed the Najin-Hasan Logistics Project, involving the two Koreas and Russia. The project aimed to transport Russian coal to South Korea via North Korea, a symbol of trilateral cooperation and a pivotal part of President Park Geun-hye's Eurasia Initiative.
In regards to supporting the Rajin-Khasan project, Seoul is reviewing the purpose, content, and how the sanctions are being implemented along with various situations in the international community.
Individuals expected to be blacklisted include Kim Yo-jong, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, and also the head of the North Secretary Office, which funneled 70% of the wages from the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Park to weapons development. The Kaesong complex was closed by Seoul last month in response to Pyongyang's nuclear and long-range missile tests. The imminent sanctions come on the heels of new UN sanctions, the strongest imposed on North Korea in more than 2 decades.
If we lay out additional unilateral sanctions on North Korea, it will encourage UN member nations to follow suit. Being a major contributor to the strongest sanctions against Pyongyang, we will garner support from the international community.
Although experts say backlash from North Korea is expected after Seoul announces its new set of sanctions against Pyongyang on Tuesday, there is also hope that measures will force the reclusive regime to make long-term changes. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Turning to local politics, Korea's minor opposition People's Party is experiencing turmoil within as the party's leadership is split over whether to reunite with the main opposition camp ahead of the April general election. Shin Se-min takes a closer look to find out if this could represent a breaking point for the minor opposition bloc.
Opposing views on the issue of uniting opposition forces. The rift among leaders of the country's minor opposition People's Party continues to grow following an official rejection on Friday to the major party of Korea's proposal to join forces. Representative Kim Han-gil, the chief campaign manager of the People's Party, laid down the gauntlet during the party's general meeting Monday, saying that the best interest of the country and the history of democracy should take priority over the party's own interests.
Achieving successful parliamentary negotiations shouldn't be the goal of our party. Integrated resistance against the ruling party for the sake of the people is needed.
Following Kim's statement, An Chol-soo, co-chair of the party, reaffirmed his stance, rejecting suggestions of possible alliance of opposition forces and even an electoral coalition.
Unconditional consolidation of the parties is the path to failure. I believe the people will not regress by granting the ruling party a majority of seats in parliament.
An said that the party's official stance will not change based on an individual's opinion and referred to his goal of new politics, which is to break the two-party political system. The discord follows the proposal from Minju Party's interim leader Kim Jong-un last Wednesday to unite for victory in the April's general elections and to lay the groundwork for governmental change at the presidential election in 2017. Reflecting the turmoil in the opposition bloc, the approval ratings of the People's Party fell to its lowest in 2 weeks at 11.5%, raising concerns of whether or not the party will maintain its unity ahead of the April 13th general elections. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, Korea's economic growth is slowing as exports slump and consumer spending remains sluggish. That's according to a new monthly report by the Korea Development Institute, or KDI, released on Monday. The institute says the slowdown mainly stems from worsening economic conditions abroad, which is also causing instability in local financial markets. However, KDI adds that Korea has built up defenses against external shocks, citing the country's massive foreign exchange reserves. Korea's exports have dropped every month for more than a year, taking a toll on local manufacturers and resulting in plunging facility investment. Korea's Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho once again emphasized the government will use all possible measures to create jobs. Yoo's comments came on Monday as he made a visit to Hannam University, which currently runs a one-stop center helping young people find jobs. He also stressed that pushing up the employment rate is the key agenda of the current administration led by President Park Geun-hye. The government will announce a new set of measures this month to boost female participation rate in the country's workforce and raise the number of jobs for the younger generation. Internal strife within Lotte Group continues as the founding family of Korea's fifth largest conglomerate battles for control. It was Shin Dong-bin who clinched the latest win, surviving a request by his older brother to remove him from the company's board of directors. Kim Min-ji updates us on how this family feud is panning out.
The ball seems to be in Shin Dong-bin's court. At an extraordinary general session over the weekend, shareholders of Lotte Holdings, which controls Lotte Group, turned down a request made by the Lotte founder's eldest son, Shin Dong-ju, to dismiss his younger brother from the company's board of directors. The elder brother was stripped of his executive titles at 3 of Lotte's Japanese affiliates early last year and has since been struggling to claw his way back up through 8 different lawsuits. The main concern now is the health of the conglomerate's patriarch, Shin Gyuk-ho, as it will decide the next course of action. According to Dong-ju, his father handpicked him as his successor, but his younger brother Dong-bin continues to claim their father is unable to make reasonable judgments due to mental health problems. The founder will go through physical checkups and the court will decide whether he needs a legal guardian. If the court believes he does, it could deal a major blow to Dong-ju's efforts to regain power. In light of his health, Shin Gyuk-ho is likely to be removed from his executive position at Lotte Confectionery. A regular shareholders meeting will be held on March 25th to vote on the matter. The founder's term comes to an end this month, and due to his old age, insiders say it's not likely he will be re-elected. With that, the patriarch is expected to gradually step down from all his positions at Lotte affiliates by next year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In other news, the government has given the green light for the first self-driving car to hit Korea's roads. With this landmark step, South Korea joins the global race to develop and commercialize driverless vehicles. For more on Korea's baby steps in this technology, we turn to Kwon Jang-ho.
Korea issued the first license plate for an autonomous car on Monday. While it may only be a temporary one issued to a single car, it's a sign that the country is ready to take on the challenge of developing a self-driving car for the masses. The 5-year license plate was issued to a new Hyundai Genesis fitted with the latest high-tech driving assist systems. It will only be allowed to travel along 6 designated routes over a total distance of around 320 kilometers. At least 2 people are required to be in the car when it's on the road, and if anything goes wrong, it will switch to a manual mode so a human driver can take over. Hyundai has already been testing autonomous cars on public roads in the US state of Nevada. But in terms of the autonomous car game, it's considered a bit of a latecomer. Google was the first to get a license from Nevada in 2012, and since then, many of the biggest automakers have joined the race, including BMW, Nissan and Ford. But interest in Korea is just heating up. The Transport Ministry says it's received a number of applications for these licenses from university research labs and small and medium-sized businesses, meaning that more locally developed autonomous cars could hit the streets soon. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
On a more somber note, one of the most influential first ladies in U.S. history, Nancy Reagan, has died. The wife of the late President Ronald Reagan passed away at her home in Los Angeles on Sunday morning. The couple occupied the White House during much of the 1980s. Kim Mo-kyun takes a look back at how she lived.
The former First Lady of the United States, Nancy Reagan, has died at the age of 94 after suffering heart failure. Reagan became one of the most influential and well-loved First Ladies in U.S. history during her husband Ronald Reagan's presidency from 1981 to 1989. Their relationship was very close, with some observers saying she exercised a powerful influence over him during his time in the White House. Ronald Reagan died in 2004 after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. Nancy Davis was a Hollywood actress during the 1940s and 1950s before she married Reagan, who was then a prominent film actor in 1952. The couple had 2 children together, Patty Davis and Ron Jr. She served as the First Lady of California during her husband's stint as California governor until they moved into the White House in 1980. 2 years later, Nancy Reagan made her own mark with her signature Just Say No anti-drug campaign. But after her husband developed Alzheimer's disease, she worked as a strong advocate in discovering a cure for the chronic neurological disorder. Offering their condolences, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama said Nancy Reagan had made their transition to the White House easier with her warm and generous advice. Former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary said they were deeply saddened to learn of Nancy Reagan's passing. Officials say Nancy Reagan will be buried next to her husband at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
That brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.